Hey, Kyler here. Our aim for this show is to throw a dart right in the bullseye of what it looks like to leverage every opportunity that life throws at us. I hope you find value in today's episode.
Welcome back, Leverage Life Show. Kyler, let me take you back to when we were I think I was in middle school and you were in high school because we're 4 years apart. Every time we are running to the car, say we're going to a restaurant as a family, what happens when someone's trying to get in the front door to the passenger seat?
What happens?
Yeah. You remember
uh,
what would happen?
a fight or saying shotgun?
Yeah, I mean, you got to say shotgun, no blitz, of
Shotgun
course.
and blitz.
But even if I got there faster than you or whatever, and I'm trying to get up there, you're like bear hugging, grabbing the arms, throwing me back or something because
Because I've always
you,
been bigger and stronger. That's what you're about to
true,
say.
but I've always been faster, of course.
That's not true either.
So you'd grab me, of course, being the older brother and doing what older brothers do. You'd wrangle me and you'd throw me out of the front seat because you want that front seat. If anyone's going to get it, it's going to be big bro. That's just how it always goes. People always want to be in that front seat. It's gotta happen. But eventually you went to college and I had that front seat all to myself for 4 straight years. I'm telling you, it was beautiful. You had passed on that beauty of the front seat to me. It was my time to shine. It was a succession, you could say. And I tell you that hilarious, story. If you have a brother or siblings, everyone can relate to that type of situation. You battle for something, you kind of wrestle around a little bit. But it brings up a larger question, even in business, on succession planning. Sometimes you're fighting for that head seat at the table, but when you're fighting for too long and you're fighting to get to the top, you're climbing for profit, you're chasing after revenue and chasing after new clients and building new relationships. Very seldom do we stop and ask ourselves, okay, wait, who's sitting in the seat after me? Have I even thought about my succession? Or maybe I have a business partner. I mean, your relationship with your business partner is kind of like a marriage. You got to make sure that thing's in check. And if something happens to one of the partners and say the business is worth $5 million and you have equal shares in it, where's that money going to come from if the family needs to be bought out? That's why, as we go through the third episode in our diagnostic series over 8 questions that every wealth transfer plan has to be able to answer, business succession, buy, sell has to be thrown in there. And that's why we're doing it as our third episode today. Because when that comes, the business succession takes place, the buy sell agreement comes to fruition, it needs to be in place, it needs to be funded, and it needs to be aligned with everyone's goals who has a seat at the table, especially those who are actually buying in, who have the partner seat in the conversation. So that's why we need to dive into it today. And the big practical question you could say is, who's getting the keys? Who's driving the car? Does the car have gas? Is it funded? We're going to dive into that today and go very deep and practical as well on what it looks like to answer that business succession. It's not just something we can just willy nilly go by. It has to protect our families and it has to be planned for.
Mm-hmm. Business succession, definitely part of the wealth transfer conversation. And yeah, Cord, I mean, this is stuff that this is a conversation that gets pushed to the back burner constantly, time and time again. And I think it's, right. I don't want to say rightfully so, but think of the topics of conversation you're having to have. Right, you're talking about in a couple different senses. You think of business succession as legacy plays. Obviously, that's different if you're talking about passing it along like multi-generational family businesses. We're not really talking about that necessarily. We're really talking about I hate to say the more morbid aspects, but it's like, we're talking about if someone passes away. Like, what if somebody becomes disabled? What is the conversation on succession if you have a business partnership, or maybe you don't have a business partnership, but your family maybe doesn't want to continue the family business. So there's lots of things that people will have to consider when talking about business succession and planning. But inherently, these are emotional topics, especially when you're talking about mortality, and you're talking about uh, death, and really just the conversations around that with like your business partners, but then also with your
Mhm,
family as well. And like, how do we navigate all of these things? And then you throw the one of the biggest things that causes people arguments in the mix, which is money. Like
mhm,
money is a massive reason people get divorced, obviously, and just not having clarity on the situation at hand. And so when you talk about business succession, it is absolutely critical part of the conversation when we're talking about wealth transfer. And so, Core, there's really like three things that I want to just like highlight specifically on the business succession plan for it to actually work, right? So, right, you talked about ownership. So, who receives your interest in the business when you pass? If you have partners, do you actually have an agreement that outlines what that process looks like? I have seen people do it really well, and I've seen nothing at all. So you've got kind of different opposite ends of the spectrums, like anything else. But then, like, what are the average people doing? And so you've got to make sure you have some sort of document that just kind of lays the foundation of the land of like what is going to happen, what's going to happen, because you've got to make sure that you've got to know who's got the keys at the end of the day.
mhm,
Okay, is it going to be the deceased spouse? Does their family want the business? Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes they don't really have an interest in maybe what the primary breadwinner was doing, and they want to just sell it off, right? And so when you talk about like funding it, which is the next part of the conversation, that's number two. Funding is a massive part of this. Where are you going to get the money if to actually pay maybe the family to buy their share of the interest, if that is what happens? And so, which is kind of the default, by the way, if you have a business partner and let's say one of them passes away, maybe unexpectedly, and they didn't have anything in place from like, what was going to happen.
mhm,
And the default is kind of like, hey, the person's surviving family is going to be married into this business relationship partnership now with the other person. And so do you want that? I don't know.
mhm,
I mean, it is what it is.
mhm,
You've got to be able to answer that question. And a lot of times, when you talk about funding it, we're going to talk about buy-sell agreements. And so one of the most common ways to do buy-sell agreements is going to be with some form of life insurance, because if we know anything about life insurance, upon death, tax-free liquidity. That's what we talk about.
mhm,
So it's going to allow a relatively large sum of money, depending on the policy place. Like, but it's going to allow somebody to have the money to probably pay off the other person's family. So that way, that person can have the business, they can have the keys, and the business can just continue going. Okay. So buy sell funding is absolutely critical when we're talking about wealth transfer and succession for business. And the third one, Cord, is really operations. So you've got to talk through who's actually going to run the business. And so hopefully, if you have a business that has employees. You've got people, hopefully, if you're getting to the age where you're thinking about retirement, that you're maybe training people to take over those responsibilities and kind of getting you out of the day to day so you can actually pass this on effectively. So
mhm,
those are good plans, right? We want to make sure that we know who's in place, that from an operational standpoint, who is going to keep the foot on the gas to make sure that the business keeps going. You've got to have clarity on these situations. And I think that's just one of the biggest things that
mhm,
I think that's one of the biggest things that's going to allow good business succession planning is just clarity, and just having open communication with all parties involved, and just having some real adult conversations of
mhm.
reality. And so I think if you can do that, it's a very mature like viewpoint. If you can do that, it's very mature, obviously, on like all the people involved. And if you can do that, it's going to be very helpful, and you're going to be able to pass along a blessing and not a headache.
Marriage is live and die on communication, right?
Absolutely.
As do business partnerships. So let me make sure I have it straight from you. There are three things. You have your ownership, your funding, and your operations. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's obviously more things involved, but yeah, if we're breaking down three high level things, if you can get those three things down, man, you've got a really good grasp on a lot of this for sure.
I think I wanna dive into based on that, the relationships involved in this too, because that's whenever, you describe the emotions that can come into this. I mean, when you go into business with someone, there is hardly the conversation that happens about the exit strategy, the transfer part of it. But but in that conversation, it's really about the people and the relationships. And say two people have gone into business together and they've been into business for a while, they probably have employees too. They have assistants, they have uh, HR if you're big, they have multiple people that rely on them for the business too. So a buy sell funded with life insurance is proper due diligence, not just for the sake of the relationship with your partner, but also every single person involved in that business because those people are counting on us. They need us to think about these things or else they get hit too. They're going to have um they're going to have issues they're going to run into if buy sell is not properly funded. If different owners come into play, if operations get passed on to a different person, if funding is suddenly taken out of the business and somebody has to get cut from a job. Personally, I just want to dive into those. It's about people, it's about relationships, it's about care, it's about the clients who trust us to take care of their situations, it's about the employees that we are responsible for at the end of the day. That is the extension of needing to take care of the buy sell agreement. So I know I riffed on that for a second, but let me give a very practical, just quick, tangible before we jump into Kyler's example and a scenario. We'll give what we have been encouraged to do is a monthly pulse check for the business partners, for the key decision makers, the partners, you could say, the C suite, if you operate your business that way. A monthly pulse check. Are the goals aligned? Are we good to go? And then, even on top of that, a biannual review twice a year, a specific conversation over this topic, just to make sure everything is properly going correctly. Ownership, funding, and operations, just to make sure everything is up to date. And I think that's just wisdom, good stewardship, good due diligence. It takes care of the people that rely on us.
Cool. Absolutely love that. Yeah, and everybody has a different meeting cadence, obviously. You have different meetings for different things, but I really do like the monthly pulse checks, and these are so easy, obviously. Like you can just write out a monthly kind of very, very, very basic. Hey, how we doing with X, Y, and Z? We good? Feel good with it? Make sure that your business partner and yourself, there's no resentment that is slowly building for whatever reason, or there's just something that's not been communicated on one other person's side that just needs to be taken care of. And so having a monthly pulse check cord, like the biannual discussions on these conversations as well, I think that's so wise to be able to do that and to actually take that in and implement that into your business. And that's a great challenge for today for anybody that's
Mhm.
listening to this for sure. So let's paint a picture, Cord. And I really want to paint the picture for really what this actually looks like to go really well. Okay. Let's consider two business partners. They've been in business for 20 years together. They're really good friends. A lot of people will tell people not to go into business with their friends. Okay. There's different sides of the opinions on that, of course, but these people specifically have made it work out great. They vibe, they play off of one of their strengths. One person's really good at, let's say, communications and sales and just outreach, just strategic growth. And maybe the other person is really, really good at operations. And they're really good at outlining procedures and the finances and just making sure everything takes care of and buttoned up because they're really, really, really analytical. So we've got two kind of different strengths, pictures of two different partners, if you will. And let's say one of them unexpectedly gets a diagnosis and it's an aggressive form of cancer, let's say. And let's say 3 to 4 months, that's what they were given. But unfortunately, it was so progressive that actually only lasted 2 months.
Mm.
And so those are very, very heavy situations. But what they had internally is they had already laid out all of this succession planning by sell agreements. They had everything funded with life insurance, um, to the valuation of their business with the individual membership interests. And when that happened, the family was taken care of.
Mhm.
The other business partner, they were able to basically cash in that life insurance policy, and it gave them the liquidity they needed to give that to the other person's family to basically, quote unquote, buy them out. Because the other person's family, they already knew they didn't want the business.
Mhm.
That was the main breadwinner. That was their skill set. That's what they did. That was their profession. And it made and it absolutely was a great, living to provide and career for that
Mhm.
person's family. But that life insurance, that amount of cash that they used to basically pay off that family, the family's now secured. They're taken care of
Mhm.
for, a long time, because now they have a lot of liquidity that they can just continue life in a lot of ways. But on the other side of the coin, now that business can still operate because the person that's in charge has the keys, and it was already laid out from a planning standpoint from day one.
Mhm.
So I just want to paint that picture of what that looks like, really working well. Now, on the flip side, the exact opposite. Same situation with business partners, but didn't have anything in place. Now, that business partner is married to that, actually I shouldn't say married, but married business wise to that other person, that other family. Family doesn't want anything to do with it. There's
Mhm.
no money involved to be able to pay off the family. So what do you do? I don't know. There's that's going to end up in lots of different very hard conversations, and probably going
Mhm.
to be pulling in some people involved. That's going to cost money to get things resolved. That's where we don't want to go with it. So you always want to make sure that you're doing the right thing, that you are being a good leader, a good steward of the resources and things that God has given you, and to
Mhm.
make sure that you are taking care of your family, your business partners, and ultimately, the legacy that you want to leave long term. So, Cord, just want to paint that picture for you.
Yeah.
So, I know you've got some good takeaways for this episode. So, I'm going to pass it on to you and let you take it home.
It's a really great painted picture, and I think it lands right where we need to land this episode today, to just go ahead and put a deadline on the calendar to schedule this meeting and put some serious questions on there. Okay, let's review the buy sell agreement first off. Or do you even have one in place? Let's make sure that language is properly where it needs to go, and then go even deeper than that, because that's kind of a surface level question. Most business owners know they need a buy sell agreement if things are in place. Most people would know that. Go deeper even than that, and ask, if I die tomorrow, what do you want to happen with the business? Do you want to pay my family out? If so, where's that money going to come from? Do we have that adequately funded? Go deeper than the surface level and ask those harder questions. And then, okay, so if I'm not around, if I die, who do you want to take my place? What happens to the operations after that? What do you want the business to look like on the other side of that? And those are conversations that need to happen very intentionally in a pulse check or in a biannual review, just with the key decision makers and the partners and the owners of the company. And then you can take those alignments and those goals and the outlines of those conversations, and you can take it to someone that can fund it and make it legal like an attorney. Then you can go on that and get it notarized and do all the things you need to do to make sure it functions exactly the way it needs to function. But it starts by scheduling the meeting and not letting anything get in the way. It's not something you kick the can down the road. So go ahead and schedule that meeting. Who is going to get the keys? And if you have any questions for us with any of our people that we know, or we are always happy to offer a second opinion on what it looks like to fund a buy sell agreement. We've seen it happen all the time. Go ahead and shoot us a text. Text show, SHOW, to 479-396-3528. That is 479-396-3528. Shoot us a message. We would love to talk to you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like today's episode. If you found any value in it, feel free to share it with your business partner. We will see you next Friday.